First, I'd like to start out by saying thank you all for sticking around and avoiding traffic. Not assuming that you all drive. A lot of you are transportation folks, so you probably took the train or a bus at some point. I will say I got rid of my car about 10 years and 1 month ago, and I hope not to buy one again for environmental reasons and otherwise. But I'm going to jump right in. We're primarily talking about Move Culver City. And if you've heard about Move Culver City at all regionally, I think a lot of people equate that with just being the bike lane, some pedestrian improvements, and the protected bus lane. But we're going to be talking about a little bit more and sort of changing the mindset of mobility in general. So a little bit about us. Of course, we're on the west side. We're 5 square miles, about 40,000 people. During the day, there are about 60,000. But a lot of changes have happened. And I was just talking with one of our residents who works for Metro. There's a lot that's changing. Oh, and I see our former head of public works, Charles Herberson, right here. Hope you're enjoying your retirement from Culver, Charles. But we have a lot of change coming in, and a lot of change has happened just in the last 4 years. Sony's a big employer. There's Westfield, Culver City, and of course, Amazon Studios has their headquarters in Culver City now, finished during the pandemic. Amazon Studios has their headquarters in Culver City, and HBO, I think it's mostly in LA City, but it's right at the Culver City station. So you can understand there's a lot of money and a lot of literally trillion-dollar companies coming in, and with that will come a lot of change. We already have connections, of course, to Culver City Bus, our transit line, the E line where our station is, Metro Bus, Santa Monica Buses, and LA DOT. We have a really great track record when it comes to transportation and transit. For a California small operator, I think we've gotten this award quite a few times, but First time. I'm sorry, I was wrong. But we had a great transportation director to start, but just a few years ago, Rolando Cruz became our transportation director. He came from the city of Santa Monica, and we sort of gave him a little bit of a mandate as the council. So, as I said, we have connection to regional rail, the Expo line came to Culver City in 2012. Once it extended to Santa Monica, we got even more traffic from various places. A lot of our investment in the past, though, and I want to jump to this, has been really focused on getting people through Culver City as quickly as possible, rather than really trying to accommodate the needs of residents and stakeholders within Culver City. A lot of our transportation work has really been fixed on making sure that our roads are safe and our sidewalks are safe, which are genuine concerns. But we really wanted to try to do something different as a council. So in terms of the way we talked about transportation before, as I said, it was primarily focused on cars. It lacked real mobility alternatives. Our buses that are the most popular, of course, are the 6, which goes from the Green Line station to Culver City to UCLA. It's utilized by a lot of UCLA students and a lot of people going to LAX. And the 1, which goes from Culver City all the way down to Venice/Marina del Rey. But we're trying to change our thinking around what mobility is and how it can serve everybody and not just people who drive cars. So we talked specifically about the redistribution of the public right-of-way, complete streets, I'm sure you're all familiar with, and how to accommodate pedestrians, cyclists, and people in automobiles at the same time, rather than just focusing on one. This is something that the city has spoken about many times. I've been on the council for a little over 4 years now. Many prior councils have spoken about it in the same way, but there have been a lot of challenges with implementation. And the largest challenge, as you might expect, is money. A lot of our money is tied up and dedicated with contracts to police and fire and other things. And then we have a lot of capital improvements to do on our buildings throughout the city. So when it came to a pot of money that we could actually use, there were limited funds. But we wanted to do something different and bold. And I should say, prior to Move Culver City, which Diana is going to talk about in just a second, we were looking at two really major options for mobility. One being a bike share program, and we were either going to go with the LA Metro or use a private provider. And then another was a connector that would connect downtown Culver City to the Culver City Metro station. When I first joined the council, I believe in our first budget session, we almost came to the conclusion that we had to choose, because either project would be sort of prohibitively expensive. But we wanted to start to think about mobility in a different way that wasn't just how many buses do we have? Do we have buses? Do we have bike share? But something Rolando Cruz, our transportation director, talks about a lot is mobility as a service. So that includes bus and bike lanes. That includes, mobility gateways and hubs, like at the Fox Hills Mall / Westfield Culver City, but which everyone still calls the Fox Hills Mall, that really focuses on trying to get to our electrification requirements for the state faster, and dedicated bus and bike platforms, but also two things that aren't explicitly spelled out on this, but one is our Culver City Bus application, Next Culver City Bus. It's one of the means through which we want to connect people to mobility as a service, and to hear Rolando talk about it, it's more accurate than some other regional applications, and maybe some very large ones. And then also we have an electric bus circulator, which goes from downtown Culver City to the Metro station to our arts district and back. It's a pilot, but it's free, and it's really trying to get both the people who come to Culver City to visit out of their cars, but also residents. I'm not going to talk about these two last services because I feel like Diana will fill in a lot of the specifics, which I think this audience is much more interested in. So I'm going to pass it over to her. But I just wanted to underline the fact that a lot of this would not have happened without the political will to make it happen. Our staff is very, very talented. All of this could have happened a long time ago, but a lot of past councils were really focused on how long does it take a car to get from the edge of Culver City to the outside of Culver City, and that was the priority focus. If we want to address our climate change goals, if we want to get people out of their cars, if we want to make our city streets breathable and livable for decades or centuries to come, we got to break up with fossil fuels. But with that, I will pass it over to Diana.
Thank you. All right, I think I'm going to stand here just so that I can still see the screen, but then I can see you guys. So good evening, everybody. My name is Diana Chang, and I am the Transportation and Mobility Planning Manager with the City of Culver City, as well as the Project Manager for the Move Culver City project. As the previous slide shows, Move Culver City really is a project that's intended to start shifting the mobility paradigm and to give people mobility choices. It is Culver City's attempt to take bold actions to start creating a better mobility future for our community. So Move Culver City basically is a quick build project implementing the bus and bike lanes or mobility lanes on 3 major arterials in Culver City. And this is done through the tactical urbanism method. The previous panel talked about using wonky terms. I hope I'm not using it too much here. And I'll explain tactical urbanism a little bit in the later slide. But we have just implemented the first corridor in downtown Culver City, and that's connecting the Metro E-Line station with the Culver City downtown and Culver City Arts District. And this is a 1.3-mile corridor for which we implemented bus lanes and bike lanes on both directions. And in the future, we plan on expanding the Move Culver City project to Jefferson Boulevard and Sepulveda Boulevard. Both of these corridors connect with major transit centers, the regional rail network, as well as major destinations, and they are also identified as transit priority corridors in the city's general plan update. So through the quick build process, we're able to put out or implement the street transformation in a much shorter time frame compared to the conventional way of implementing permanent infrastructure. So we took 13 months from the beginning of the design kickoff to actually going live with the mobility lanes. And it's a total of 17 months if you're counting the 4 months that we took to secure the design contractors. And so we spent 6 months to do the design and a very, very extensive community outreach. 6 months to secure the construction contractor and the materials, which is actually longer than we anticipated because we bumped up against the global supply chain issue during the pandemic. And it took us 6 weeks to construct the mobility lane as well as the asphalt art. And we went live with the first mobility lane corridor in November of last year. And post-launch, we spent about 2 months making some adjustments to the mobility lanes that we constructed because of all the feedback and observations that we received. And so in January of this year, we officially entered into the pilot period for the mobility lanes. And the pilot period will be a minimum of 12 months, during which we will be collecting data and conducting evaluations. All right, so we use the tactical urbanism approach, as I mentioned earlier, for this project, which is essentially using lower cost temporary materials to catalyze long-term changes. And most of the materials that we used are paint, delineators, and signs. And we also created the bus and bike platforms that will allow buses to pull into the bus stops without disrupting the bike lanes. And our project extent is between the curbs, so we didn't break any concrete. And because of this tactical urbanism method, we're able to make the changes very quickly, and we're able to make adjustments as necessary during the pilot. So this process also allows us to collect the data and conduct the evaluation that's necessary to inform the design for the permanent infrastructure. So before we put in the mobility lanes, the corridor has 2 car lanes per each direction, and there are some parking spaces along the corridor. With the Move Culver City, we, in right-of-way where we don't really have constraints, we were able to put in 1 car lane, 1 bus lane, 1 bike lane per direction. And in locations where we do have some right-of-way constraint or some other factor, we put in 1 car lane and 1 shared bus-bike lane per direction. And we did retain some on-street parking in the Arts District where the off-street parking is very limited. So I'm going to show a series of photos on how our concept is transformed to reality. This is our downtown, picture of our downtown Culver City Main Street with the bus and bike lane. And if you see the far back, you'll see the curb extensions with asphalt art. We implemented curb extensions throughout the corridor with the asphalt art and to facilitate the pedestrian movement. And so here are a couple of pictures of cyclists enjoying the bike lane during our Go Live event. These pictures showcase our bus and bike platforms with the ramps so that the cyclists can continue their route without being disrupted. And as part of this project, we also expand our mobility services by adding a new downtown circulator service that Dr. Lee mentioned earlier. We also expanded our share micro-mobility program, including 2 operators on scooter share and bike share. And we use electric buses on all of our bus service and circulator service on this corridor. So we've done basically the bus stop furniture upgrade for all the bus stops along the corridor. Some are still in progress. And we also created 3 gateway mobility stops along the corridor. And so with the gateway mobility stops, it allows access to transit and micro-mobility services, and in the future, micro-transit service. And so in the future, we will also enhance these gateway mobility stops with wayfinding, public Wi-Fi, enhanced lighting, video surveillance, and also additional placemaking elements. So here are images showing our placemaking asphalt arc, which is actually put in place by city staff, our design consultant team, as well as a group of community volunteers. And this, yes, thank you, Dr. Lee. And this really gave the community a sense of ownership and pride on the project and with the city. So as an urban planner, I'm really happy to see this project implemented. And this is done through a lot of hard work for everyone that's involved on this project. And there are several major elements that contributed to the successful implementation. First and foremost, we have a very, very progressive city council who understands the importance of providing mobility options and alternative mobilities to people. And they told us to be bold. And before COVID, we were already looking at implementing bus and bike lanes. But when the COVID hit, with the drastic decline of the public transit ridership, we were kind of hesitant. So we wanted to put it on hold. But the city council told us at that time, please take both steps to make the changes and to improve the mobility. And so we came back to the city council with a suggestion that let's implement the bus and bike lanes using the tactical urbanism method, which the city council supported. The city council has also been very supportive throughout the whole process, despite some of the community oppositions. And this unwavering support is what makes it possible to move the project forward. And the second key element is that we surrounded ourselves with people who are advocates. And so these advocates are not shy about telling us what they want, and what doesn't work for them, what works for them. And they have also been very vocal throughout the whole process to support the project. And in addition to that, we also surround ourselves with people who do have concerns. And we listen to them with an open mind, and we talk to them about the project rationale, project goals, the design, and we highlight the agreements that, the things that we can agree on to move forward. And so we also have design guidelines that we use to make sure that it's something that we can align our project design and the deliverables with the project goals. And so this is something that we discussed with the community and took to the city council approval, and it's very effective in making sure that the project stays on scope. So as mentioned earlier, we've done extensive public outreach, and this is something that allowed us to learn the needs and concerns of the community, and also for us to improve the project and improve the project messaging. Our original project messaging was about prioritizing people over cars on the design of the street, which we later on refined it to be about shifting mobility paradigm and also about giving people mobility choices. And this message is something that the community can relate to. And we also have done constant monitoring and outreach to the community where we can address their concerns and manage their expectations. So we recognize that in order for alternative mobility to be attractive, we have to combine street transformation with expanded mobility services and better customer experience. And so that's what the project did by combining all these different elements to try to get it so that people will be more open. And this helps with the community buy-in as well. So this project, through the tactical urbanism method, we were able to put out the street transformations at a much lower cost than if we were to do it through the conventional method. And so this, several years back when we were looking at implementing a bike lane project, this was something that was going to take several years to implement, and the engineering cost estimate at that time was $10 million. But with Move Culver City, with the tactical urbanism method, we are able to do the project with the bus and bike lanes at 30% of the cost of that original project. Now, we do anticipate that there will be additional costs incurred when we take the pilot project to permanent. However, even with the additional cost that we anticipate, it's still going to be a cost saving compared to the original scope that we had. So we definitely learned a lot of lessons through this first implementation. And the number one thing is data is so key to the project because we're piloting changes that will inform the permanent design. And the challenge or the focus of the evaluation on the data is on the growth of the sustainable transportation, while at the same time looking at understanding the impacts to the vehicle volume as well as the travel time on and around the corridor. And the challenge would be on how we can tell a neutral story, which, as people with different perspectives are going to use the data and the trends to tell their own stories. And it's important for us to focus on being neutral because it's easy for people to look at the project as transit versus cars or bike versus cars. And so we need to just let the data tell the story and stay neutral here. And so finally, messaging is essential, with a clear messaging that this project is about offering people mobility alternatives. This is something that the community can identify with and can support. So with this, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Lee for closing remarks.
And I'll just be very brief. I believe both I and Diana touched on the same thing. At its core, Move Culver City is not a protected bus and bike lane. It's really about shifting people's perspectives around mobility and giving them more options. There are many, many people I know in Los Angeles County who will jump into their car to drive half a mile. I think we all know those people. I think many of us have been those people. But one of the reasons is it's not safe for them to bike because there are no protected bus and bike lanes, and or whatever transit they're using, even if it's Culver City or Metro or whatever, is not reliable. My hope is with this project, people who are in transportation or mobility in Los Angeles County, when you think of Santa Monica and you think of transit, you think the Big Blue Bus, or at least I do, and you think it seems at least more clean and reliable than a lot of other transit agencies, and that's sort of one of its signatures. Similarly, in Long Beach, in the last decade or so, they've gone through a transformation downtown where there are protected bike lanes and bike lanes all over the place. That just wasn't the case 20 years ago in Long Beach. So we're hoping, and I think the pandemic and a lot of the changes that happened during the pandemic will contribute to this. Like many places, we expanded outdoor dining, but as a result, we have a much more involved and active atmosphere in downtown Culver City, and there are a lot of people who would prefer to drive. One of the other things, and I'll just end with this because it's what I started with. The Ivy Station project finished during the pandemic, and HBO is moving in, and Amazon Studios finished their construction during the pandemic. Apple Studios finished their construction during the pandemic. We just found out a couple weeks ago that Technicolor is moving into the city as well. One of the priorities of me and some of my colleagues was really trying to set behavior patterns when all of these new employees come into the city. So it was really essential for us to have some type of infrastructure that would facilitate them getting, to places like Venice Boulevard to take the bus or to the metro station to go where they need to go to and from work. With these huge companies coming in, if they all drive, Not only do we not meet our greenhouse gas goals, but, Culver City is less of an attractive place to live and less of a healthy place to live for everyone. Also, as Diana mentioned many, many times, we have some staunch bicycle advocates who were really pushing us to do something after talking so long. But with that, I'm sure Diana and I will be around for a second. Thank you for the invitation, speaking tonight, and thank you all for sticking around.